As the trials continued, tensions in the council chambers grew thicker than ever. Each challenge Alex and Zalora completed only seemed to deepen the divide among the elders. Some were impressed by their resilience and teamwork, while others remained steadfast in their belief that interspecies unions were unnatural and dangerous. The atmosphere was charged with hostility, and whispers of dissent spread like wildfire through the village. One evening, after a particularly grueling trial involving navigating a treacherous river filled with psychic currents, Zalora sought solace in Callan's workshop. Exhausted and overwhelmed, she needed someone who wouldn't judge her, someone who understood why she was fighting so hard for this impossible dream. Callan greeted her with a sympathetic smile, handing her a steaming cup of lumitia, a soothing Luminaran beverage. "You're holding up better than I expected," he said, leaning against his cluttered workbench. "But you look like you're carrying the weight of 2 worlds on your shoulders." Zalora sighed, staring into the glowing liquid. I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. Every step feels like it's pushing us closer to disaster." Callan frowned, setting down his tools. "You've got guts, Zalora. Don't lose sight of that. But maybe there's a way to tip the scales in your favor." He hesitated before continuing. "What if I told you there's evidence that interspecies unions aren't as unprecedented as everyone thinks?" Her eyes widened. "What do you mean?" Callan pulled out a small data crystal from one of his drawers. "While you were busy surviving those ridiculous tests, I did some digging. Turns out, centuries ago, there were records of similar pairings between humans and our kind. But they were erased from history books, archives, everything. Someone didn't want anyone to know." Zalora stared at him, stunned. Who would do such a thing? And why? "Fear," Callan replied grimly. "Our ancestors probably thought mixing species would dilute our culture or weaken us somehow. So they scrubbed the truth clean and enforced strict laws to prevent it from happening again." Armed with this revelation, Zalora knew she had to confront her mother. That night, she stormed into Nessa's private quarters, where her mother sat meditating under the soft glow of bioluminescent orbs. Startled by the intrusion, Nissa opened her eyes, her expression hardening when she saw Zalora. "What is the meaning of this?" Nissa demanded, rising to her feet. "I know the truth, Mother," Zalora said, her voice trembling with anger and hurt, "about the past unions, about how they were erased. Why didn't you tell me?" Nissa froze, her composure cracking for the first time. "Where did you hear such nonsense?" "It's not nonsense," Zalora snapped, clutching the data crystal tightly. Callan found proof. "You've been hiding this from us. From me, all these years because you were afraid. Afraid of change. Afraid of what might happen if we embraced something different." Nissa's face flushed with emotion, torn between guilt and defensiveness. "It was done to protect our people," she insisted. "Those unions caused chaos, confusion. They threatened everything we hold sacred. But they also created life." Zalora countered, tears streaming down her face. "Life like mine. And now, life like my child's. Are you really willing to deny that just because it scares you?" The room fell silent, the weight of Zalora's words hanging heavy in the air. For the first time, Nissa looked unsure, her rigid stance faltering. She sank back onto her meditation cushion, covering her face with her hands. Outside, the villagers buzzed with rumors about the heated argument. Some began questioning the council's decisions, wondering if they'd been misled all along. Meanwhile, Alex stood anxiously outside Nissa's quarters, unsure whether to intervene. When Zalora finally emerged, her eyes red from crying, but blazing with determination, he rushed to her side. "We'll get through this," he said softly, wrapping an arm around her. "Together." For the first time, Zalora felt a glimmer of hope, not just for herself, but for the future of both their worlds. The twin moons of Luminara cast a soft, silvery glow over the forest as Zalora crouched behind a cluster of glowing crystalline trees. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from excitement. She had done it. Against every rule, against every warning, she had left her team and traveled to Earth alone. The forbidden planet fascinated her like nothing else in the galaxy. Its primitive beauty, its untamed wilderness, and most of all, its people intrigued her beyond measure. Zalora adjusted the shimmering cloak draped around her shoulders, ensuring it blended seamlessly with the shadows. Her lavender skin and luminous eyes would surely draw attention if anyone saw her, but no one was supposed to see her. This was meant to be a quick visit, a chance to observe humanity up close before returning home. Yet fate had other plans. As she crept through the dense underbrush, the sound of rustling leaves caught her attention. She froze, her sharp ears picking up faint footsteps nearby. Someone, or something, was approaching. Zalora pressed herself against the trunk of a tree, holding her breath. Moments later, a figure emerged into the clearing. It was a human male, tall and lean, with dark hair and glasses perched on his nose. He carried a small device in his hand, scanning the area as though searching for something. Her first instinct was to flee, but curiosity rooted her to the spot. Humans were so different from her kind. Their features were softer, their movements less precise, yet there was an undeniable charm about them. This particular human seemed gentle, his brow furrowed in concentration as he muttered words under his breath. Zalora tilted her head, trying to make sense of the strange sounds coming from his mouth. Was this how humans communicated? Before she could think better of it, a twig snapped beneath her foot. The man's head whipped around, his eyes locking onto hers. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, frozen in time. Then, slowly, he lowered the device and took a cautious step forward. "Hello," he said, his voice hesitant but warm. "Is someone there?" Zalora's mind raced. This was bad. Very bad. If he discovered who or what she really was, everything could go wrong. Still, something inside her refused to run. Instead, she stepped out from behind the tree, letting the moonlight illuminate her form. The man's eyes widened in shock, but instead of screaming or backing away, he smiled. "You're not from around here, are you?" he asked, his tone laced with wonder rather than fear. Zalora didn't respond. She couldn't, but she raised a hand in greeting, mimicking gestures she'd seen humans use in recordings. To her surprise, the man laughed softly and extended his own hand toward her. "I'm Alex," he said, pointing to himself. "Biologist. And you are?" For the next hour, they communicated through gestures and expressions, bridging the gap between species with remarkable ease. Alex showed her pictures on his device, explaining what each image represented. In return, Zalora pointed to objects in the forest, attempting to convey their names in her native tongue. By the time a sudden storm forced them apart, both felt a connection neither could explain. As Zalora activated her cloaking device and disappeared into the night, she glanced back one last time. Alex stood where she'd left him, watching the spot where she'd vanished. His expression was filled with awe, and perhaps a hint of longing. Little did either of them know, this fleeting encounter would change their lives forever. The council chambers were a breathtaking sight, even to someone as overwhelmed as Alex. Towering crystalline walls pulsed faintly with light, casting shifting patterns across the floor. The air hummed softly, as though alive with energy. At the center of the room stood an elevated platform, where the Council of Elders sat in a semicircle, their luminous robes glowing faintly under the twin moon's light that streamed through massive windows. Nissa sat at the head of the group, her expression unreadable but undeniably stern. Zalora and Alex stood side by side before the council, flanked by two guards who watched them like hawks. The villagers had gathered outside the chamber, murmuring anxiously about the unprecedented situation unfolding within. Tension hung thick in the air, pressing down on everyone present. Nissa rose from her seat, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "Zalora, you have brought shame upon our family, and possibly our entire people. Your actions defy centuries of tradition and law. Do you understand the gravity of what you've done? Yes, Mother, Zalora replied, her voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside her. But I also know that love isn't something we can plan or control. This child is proof of that. It's a miracle, not a curse. A murmur rippled through the council members, some leaning forward in curiosity, while others exchanged skeptical glances. One elder, a wiry man named Callum, spoke up. Miracle or not, this union threatens the balance of our society. How do we know this? Human will not bring harm to us. His kind has no understanding of our ways. Alex stepped forward, surprising everyone, including himself. I may not understand everything about your world yet, he began, his voice trembling slightly but gaining strength as he continued. But I care deeply for Zalora, and I already love this child. If you give me a chance, I'll prove myself worthy, not just to her, but to all of you. His words earned mixed reactions. Some elders nodded thoughtfully, while others scoffed openly. Nissa raised a hand to silence them. Words are easy, she said coldly. Actions speak louder. Therefore, you will face trials to determine whether your bond is genuine and whether it poses any threat to our people. Callan, who had slipped into the chamber unnoticed, leaned against a wall near the back, grinning mischievously. Oh, this is going to be fun, he muttered under his breath. The first trial took place immediately. They were led to a vast, shimmering labyrinth made of translucent crystal. Its walls shifted and rearranged themselves constantly, powered by psychic energy unique to Luminara. You must navigate this maze together, Callum explained. It will test your trust and cooperation. Fail, and you will never leave. As they entered the labyrinth, Alex felt disoriented almost instantly. The shifting walls reflected distorted versions of themselves, making it impossible to tell which path was real and which was an illusion. Zalora reached out instinctively, taking his hand. Stay close, she whispered. Follow my lead. At first, progress was slow. Several times, they found themselves trapped in dead ends, forcing them to backtrack. But Alex quickly adapted, using his analytical mind to memorize patterns in the maze's movements. When Zalora hesitated at a fork in the path, he pointed confidently to the left. This way, he said, surprising even himself with his certainty. Their teamwork paid off. By combining Zalora's intuition with Alex's logic, they navigated the labyrinth faster than anyone expected. As they emerged victorious, cheers erupted from the crowd outside, but not everyone was pleased. One elder scowled, muttering, "Beginner's luck." The second trial involved solving ancient riddles encoded in Luminaran history. Zalora struggled initially, unfamiliar with some obscure references, but Alex surprised her by piecing together clues based on context and pattern recognition. Together, they unraveled each puzzle, earning reluctant nods of approval from the council. By the end of the day, exhaustion weighed heavily on both of them. Yet amid the challenges, something remarkable had happened. They'd grown closer, learning to rely on each other completely. For Zalora, these trials weren't just about proving themselves. They were about discovering the strength of their bond. But the hardest tests were still to come, and not all of them would happen in the council chambers. The council chambers were a breathtaking sight, even to someone as overwhelmed as Alex. Towering crystalline walls pulsed faintly with light, casting shifting patterns across the floor. The air hummed softly, as though alive with energy. At the center of the room stood an elevated platform, where the Council of Elders sat in a semicircle, their luminous robes glowing faintly under the twin moon's light that streamed through massive windows. Nissa sat at the head of the group, her expression unreadable but undeniably stern. Zalora and Alex stood side by side before the council, flanked by two guards who watched them like hawks. The villagers had gathered outside the chamber, murmuring anxiously about the unprecedented situation unfolding within. Tension hung thick in the air, pressing down on everyone present. Nissa rose from her seat, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "Zalora, you have brought shame upon our family, and possibly our entire people. Your actions defy centuries of tradition and law. Do you understand the gravity of what you've done? Yes, Mother, Zylora replied, her voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside her. But I also know that love isn't something we can plan or control. This child is proof of that. It's a miracle, not a curse. A murmur rippled through the council members, some leaning forward in curiosity, while others exchanged skeptical glances. One elder, a wiry man named Callum, spoke up. Miracle or not, this union threatens the balance of our society. How do we know this? Human will not bring harm to us. His kind has no understanding of our ways. Alex stepped forward, surprising everyone, including himself. I may not understand everything about your world yet, he began, his voice trembling slightly but gaining strength as he continued. But I care deeply for Zylora, and I already love this child. If you give me a chance, I'll prove myself worthy, not just to her, but to all of you. His words earned mixed reactions. Some elders nodded thoughtfully, while others scoffed openly. Nissa raised a hand to silence them. Words are easy, she said coldly. Actions speak louder. Therefore, you will face trials to determine whether your bond is genuine and whether it poses any threat to our people. Callan, who had slipped into the chamber unnoticed, leaned against a wall near the back, grinning mischievously. Oh, this is going to be fun, he muttered under his breath. The first trial took place immediately. They were led to a vast, shimmering labyrinth made of translucent crystal. Its walls shifted and rearranged themselves constantly, powered by psychic energy unique to Luminara. You must navigate this maze together, Callum explained. It will test your trust and cooperation. Fail, and you will never leave. As they entered the labyrinth, Alex felt disoriented almost instantly. The shifting walls reflected distorted versions of themselves, making it impossible to tell which path was real and which was an illusion. Zylora reached out instinctively, taking his hand. Stay close, she whispered. Follow my lead. At first, progress was slow. Several times, they found themselves trapped in dead ends, forcing them to backtrack. But Alex quickly adapted, using his analytical mind to memorize patterns in the maze's movements. When Zylora hesitated at a fork in the path, he pointed confidently to the left. This way, he said, surprising even himself with his certainty. Their teamwork paid off. By combining Zylora's intuition with Alex's logic, they navigated the labyrinth faster than anyone expected. As they emerged victorious, cheers erupted from the crowd outside, but not everyone was pleased. One elder scowled, muttering, "Beginner's luck." The second trial involved solving ancient riddles encoded in Luminaran history. Zylora struggled initially, unfamiliar with some obscure references, but Alex surprised her by piecing together clues based on context and pattern recognition. Together, they unraveled each puzzle, earning reluctant nods of approval from the council. By the end of the day, exhaustion weighed heavily on both of them. Yet amid the challenges, something remarkable had happened. They'd grown closer, learning to rely on each other completely. For Zylora, these trials weren't just about proving themselves. They were about discovering the strength of their bond. But the hardest tests were still to come, and not all of them would happen in the council chambers. The journey back to Luminara was tense but quiet. Alex sat in the shuttle, gripping the edge of his seat as he stared out the window at the swirling colors of hyperspace. His mind was a whirlwind of questions and doubts. What would Zylora's people think of him? Would they see him as an intruder, or worse, a threat? And how could he possibly explain himself when he didn't even fully understand what had happened between him and Zylora? Zylora, on the other hand, was lost in thought. She couldn't stop imagining her mother's reaction. Nissa, a revered elder known for her strict adherence to tradition, would be furious. The council might not even allow Alex to set foot on their sacred planet, but there was no turning back now. They were committed to facing whatever lay ahead, together. When the shuttle broke through Luminara's atmosphere, Alex gasped at the sight below. The planet shimmered like a jewel under its twin moons, with vast forests glowing faintly in hues of blue and green. Rivers sparkled as though filled with liquid starlight, and towering crystalline trees hummed softly, creating an eerie yet beautiful melody that seemed to echo across the landscape. As they landed near Zalora's village, Kalen greeted them with a nervous grin. "Welcome to paradise," he said, clapping Alex on the shoulder. "Try not to get us all killed, okay?" Before Alex could respond, a group of villagers appeared, drawn by the unfamiliar hum of the shuttle's engines. Their faces lit up with curiosity as they approached, whispering among themselves. When they realized Alex was human, their expressions shifted from wonder to suspicion. Some stepped back, while others glared openly at him. Zalora stepped forward, raising her hands in a gesture of peace. "This is Alex," she announced firmly. "He is my mate, and we've come seeking understanding, not conflict." Her words sent ripples of shock through the crowd. Mates were chosen carefully on Luminara, based on compatibility tests and genetic alignments. The idea of bonding with someone outside their species was unheard of, and deeply unsettling to many. Just then, Nissa emerged from the gathering, her regal presence commanding immediate silence. Her silver hair shimmered in the moonlight, and her piercing gaze locked onto Zalora. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You bring a stranger, a human, to our world without permission." Zalora swallowed hard, stepping closer to her mother. "Mother, please listen. This isn't just about me anymore. There's something I need to tell you, something important." Nissa's eyes narrowed, flickering briefly toward Alex before returning to her daughter. "Speak plainly, Zalora. Whatever it is, say it now." Taking a deep breath, Zalora placed a hand over her abdomen. "I'm pregnant with Alex's child." The words hit like a thunderclap. Gasps erupted from the crowd, and several villagers took steps backward as if afraid the news might somehow infect them. Nissa stood frozen, her face pale beneath the glow of the moons. For a moment, no one spoke. Finally, Nissa found her voice, though it trembled with barely contained anger. "Do you realize what you've done? This union violates every law we hold sacred. You've endangered not only yourself, but our entire society." "I didn't plan this," Zalora cried, tears welling in her eyes. "But it happened, Mother. I love him, and I want to raise this child together, with your support, if you'll give it." Nissa shook her head, her expression hardening. "This cannot stand. The council must decide your fate, and his." With that, she turned and motioned for two guards to escort Alex and Zalora to the council chambers. As they walked through the glowing streets of the village, Alex leaned close to Zalora. "Is it always this intense around here?" he whispered, attempting a weak joke. Zalora managed a small smile despite her fear. "You have no idea." Little did they know, the real battle was only beginning. The days that followed Zalora's collapse were tense, but they also marked a turning point for Luminara. Nissa, shaken by her daughter's condition and the growing unrest in the village, took decisive action. She called an emergency meeting of the council, demanding a final vote on whether to accept Zalora and Alex's union or risk tearing their society apart. The elders debated fiercely, their voices echoing through the crystalline chambers as villagers gathered outside, holding their breath. Finally, after hours of deliberation, Nissa stood before the council and addressed them with unwavering resolve. "We have clung to tradition out of fear," she admitted, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. "But fear cannot guide us forever. My daughter has shown me that love and life are stronger than any law. If we reject her now, we reject the very essence of who we are." Her declaration tipped the scales. With a narrow majority, the council voted in favor of recognizing Zalora and Alex's bond. News of their decision spread quickly, sparking celebrations throughout the village. For the first time in weeks, the glowing streets of Luminara were filled with laughter and music instead of anger and division. As Zalora recovered under careful medical supervision, Alex stayed by her side, refusing to leave even for a moment. Their child's heartbeat, steady and strong, became a symbol of hope not just for them, but for everyone on Luminara. When doctors finally gave Zalora clearance to leave the clinic, she and Alex walked hand in hand into the radiant sunlight, greeted by cheers from friends, allies, and even former skeptics. Months passed, and the day finally arrived when Zalora gave birth to their child. A tiny being who glowed faintly with bioluminescent energy, a perfect blend of human and alien traits. The delivery was difficult, but Zalora persevered, supported by Alex, Kaylin, and Nissa, who had come to fully embrace her role as a grandmother. When the baby let out its first cry, a sound that seemed to harmonize with the hum of the crystalline trees, the room erupted in tears and applause. They named the child Silas, a name meaning bridge in an ancient Luminaran dialect. From the moment he opened his luminous eyes, it was clear that Silas was special. He possessed abilities unlike anything seen before, able to manipulate light and energy in ways that hinted at untapped potential. Elders marveled at his unique gifts, while younger generations saw him as a living reminder of what could be achieved when two worlds came together. Under Nissa's guidance, the Council began revising centuries-old laws to accommodate interspecies relationships. Schools introduced lessons about Earth and its people, fostering understanding between cultures. Slowly but surely, Luminara transformed into a place where differences were no longer feared, but celebrated. One evening, as Zalora and Alex stood beneath the twin moons with Silas cradled between them, they reflected on how far they'd come. "Do you think this is what peace feels like?" Alex asked softly, gazing at the glowing horizon. Zalora smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "It's just the beginning," she replied. "There will always be challenges, but as long as we face them together, I believe we can overcome anything." In the distance, the crystalline trees shimmered brighter than ever, as if mirroring the hope shining within their hearts. Together, Zalora, Alex, and little Silas represented a new chapter, not just for Luminara, but for all species willing to embrace change and build bridges across the stars. With Kaylin's help, Zalora prepared for her return to Earth. The engineer worked tirelessly in his cluttered workshop, modifying a small shuttle to ensure it could evade detection by both the Council of Elders and Earth's primitive radar systems. "This thing will be invisible to everyone," Kaylin promised as he welded a final piece onto the ship's hull. Zalora watched anxiously, her hands clasped tightly together. Every second felt like an eternity. She knew she was risking everything, her reputation, her freedom, even her life. But she couldn't turn back now. The journey to Earth passed in a blur of stars and silence. Zalora stared out the window at the endless expanse of space, her mind racing with questions. Would Alex remember her? Would he believe her when she told him the truth about who and what she really was? Most importantly, would he accept the responsibility that came with being the father of her child? When they finally landed in the same remote forest where Zalora had first met Alex, she felt a strange mix of excitement and dread. The air smelled different here, richer, heavier, and the sounds of wildlife filled the silence. Taking a deep breath, Zalora stepped out of the shuttle, her heart pounding. Kaylin stayed behind, promising to monitor their surroundings and intervene only if necessary. Following Alex's scent, a trick taught to her during training missions, Zalora made her way toward the research facility she glimpsed on her previous visit. It wasn't long before she spotted him through the trees, standing outside the building while jotting notes on a clipboard. He looked exactly as she remembered, kind eyes hidden behind glasses, a thoughtful expression etched across his face. For a moment, she simply stood there, watching him, afraid to approach. Summoning her courage, Zalora stepped into view. At first, Alex didn't notice her, but when he glanced up and saw her glowing form illuminated by the sunlight filtering through the trees, his pen slipped from his fingers and clattered to the ground. "Zalora." he stammered, his voice shaking with disbelief. "Is that really you?" "It's me," she replied softly, stepping closer. Her accent was halting, but her meaning was clear. Alex stared at her for a long moment, then broke into a wide grin. "I thought I imagined you," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "But here you are. What? How did you find me again?" Zalora hesitated, unsure where to begin. How could she explain something so impossible? Finally, she decided to start with the simplest truth. "I came back because I needed to see you. There's something important I have to tell you." Alex tilted his head, curiosity lighting up his features. "Important? Like what?" She took another step closer, placing a hand over her abdomen. "I'm carrying your child." For several seconds, Alex just blinked at her, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Then, slowly, comprehension dawned in his eyes. "Wait, you're pregnant? With my baby?" His voice rose in pitch, betraying his shock. "But that's not possible. You're an alien, and I'm, well, human." "I know," Zalora said quickly, raising her hands to calm him. "It shouldn't have happened. No one knows how it did. But it's true. I've seen the tests myself." Alex stumbled backward, leaning against a tree for support. His mind raced as he tried to process this revelation. A million questions swirled in his head, but one stood out above the rest. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you deserve to know," Zalora replied earnestly. "And because I need your help. My people won't understand. They might try to hurt us, or worse, if they find out. I want to bring you home with me, to Luminara, so we can figure this out together." Alex stared at her, torn between fear and awe. This was madness. Absolute madness. Yet as he looked into Zalora's luminous eyes, he saw nothing but sincerity. Against all odds, he found himself nodding. "Okay," he said quietly. "Let's do it." Relief washed over Zalora as she reached out to take his hand. Together, they walked back toward the hidden shuttle, unaware of the challenges waiting for them on the other side of the galaxy. The revelation of erased interspecies unions sent shockwaves through the council and the village. What had once been dismissed as an unthinkable violation of tradition now seemed less alien and more human. Yet, not everyone was ready to embrace this new truth. A faction of radicals within the council, led by Elder Calum, refused to accept Zalora and Alex's union. They argued that reviving such practices would corrupt Luminara's genetic lineage and destroy their cultural purity. Calum's fiery speeches ignited fear among some villagers, who began rallying against the couple. Whispers turned into shouts, and soon protests erupted outside the council chambers. Signs bearing slogans like "Protect our legacy" and "No human taint" were held aloft, while angry chants echoed through the glowing streets. The atmosphere grew volatile, threatening to spiral out of control. Zalora felt the weight of the world pressing down on her. She wanted to fight back, to defend herself and Alex, but she worried that confrontation would only deepen the divide. It was Kalen who suggested a different approach. "You've already shown them you're strong," he said one evening as they huddled in his workshop. "Now show them you're united. If the radicals want division, give them unity instead." Inspired by his words, Zalora and Alex decided to stage a peaceful demonstration, a celebration of diversity and hope. With the help of progressive-minded elders and curious youth inspired by their courage, they organized a gathering in the heart of the village. Using holographic projections powered by Kalen's modified tech, they showcased images of Earth and Luminara side by side. Humans working alongside aliens, cultures blending harmoniously, children laughing under twin moons. On the day of the event, hundreds gathered in the central square, drawn by curiosity or conviction. As the holograms illuminated the night sky, Zalora stepped forward to speak. Her voice trembled at first, but it grew stronger with each word. "We are not so different from one another," she began, addressing both her people and the protesters. Fear has kept us apart for too long, but love can bring us together. This child I carry is proof of that, a bridge between our worlds." Alex joined her, holding her hand tightly. "I may not be from here, but I believe in what we can build together. A future where differences aren't feared, they're celebrated." Their speech stirred something deep within the crowd. Some remained skeptical, but many others cheered, moved by the sincerity of their words. Even Nissa, watching silently from the sidelines, seemed touched. For the first time, cracks appeared in the wall of resistance. But just as hope began to take root, chaos struck. During the demonstration, a group of radicals attempted to sabotage the event, hurling insults and disrupting the holograms. Panic spread as scuffles broke out among the attendees. In the chaos, Zalora collapsed, clutching her abdomen in pain. Alex rushed to her side, his face pale with fear. "Zalora, are you okay?" I don't know," she gasped, tears streaming down her face. "Something's wrong." Nissa pushed through the crowd, her expression shifting from anger to concern. Without hesitation, she ordered the guards to escort Zalora and Alex to the medical facility. As they carried her away, the protests faded into the background, replaced by a collective sense of urgency. At the clinic, doctors worked tirelessly to stabilize Zalora and ensure the safety of her unborn child. The stress of recent events had triggered complications, forcing her to rest indefinitely. But even in her weakened state, Zalora refused to give up. She knew the battle wasn't over, not yet. Back in the village, Nissa addressed the crowd, her voice firm but compassionate. "Enough," she declared. "This division ends now. My daughter has shown us courage. Let us repay her with understanding." Her words silenced the radicals and rallied support for Zalora and Alex's cause. Though challenges lay ahead, a fragile peace settled over Luminara, one built on the promise of unity and the hope of a brighter tomorrow. Zalora returned to Luminara with a heavy heart, her mind replaying every moment of her encounter with Alex. The memory of his smile lingered in her thoughts, and the way he had looked at her, without fear, without judgment, felt like something out of a dream. But dreams were fleeting, and reality was harsh. As she stepped through the shimmering portal that connected Earth to her home planet, Zalora knew she had broken countless rules. She also knew she couldn't stay away from Alex forever. For weeks, she tried to bury herself in work, hoping the distractions of her duties would silence the longing inside her. Yet no matter how hard she focused on analyzing data or attending council meetings, Alex's face kept appearing in her mind. It wasn't just nostalgia. It was something deeper, something she couldn't quite explain. And then, one day, everything changed. During a routine medical scan required for all explorers upon returning from missions, the medic paused abruptly, staring at the glowing holographic display above Zalora's body. This can't be right," the medic muttered, tapping furiously at the console. Zalora frowned, sitting up on the examination table. "What is it?" she asked nervously. The medic hesitated before answering. "There's something unusual happening in your physiology. Your energy levels are off, and there's an anomaly in your core matrix." Zalora's stomach tightened. Core anomalies were rare among her kind, often signaling illness, or worse. But when the medic ran additional tests, the truth came crashing down like a meteor strike. "You're pregnant," the medic said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Zalora blinked, certain she'd misheard him. "Pregnant? That's impossible," she exclaimed. "We don't even have mates yet. I've never bonded with anyone." The medic shook his head gravely. "I don't know how it happened, but these readings don't lie. You're carrying life within you, and based on the genetic markers, it's not entirely Luminaran." At first, Zalora refused to believe it. She demanded another test, then another, but the results remained the same. Slowly, the pieces began falling into place. The strange sensations she'd felt lately, fatigue, warmth radiating from her abdomen, flashes of unfamiliar emotions, they all made sense now. Somehow, Impossibly, her brief encounter with Alex had resulted in conception. Panic set in as Zalora realized the implications. Interspecies reproduction between humans and aliens had never been documented before. Her people would see this as unnatural, a violation of their sacred laws. If the Council of Elders found out, they might exile her, or worse. Desperate for advice, she turned to her closest confidant, Kalen. Kalen was a wiry engineer with a knack for mischief and a heart of gold. When Zalora showed up at his workshop late one night, he immediately sensed something was wrong. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he teased, setting down his tools. But when she told him the truth, his grin faded. "Wait, you're what?" he gasped, nearly dropping the wrench in his hand. "I'm serious, Kalen," Zalora whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't know what to do. If anyone finds out." Kalen placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Okay. Let's think this through. First things first. Does this human know about any of this?" Zalora shook her head. "No. I left without saying goodbye. He probably thinks I'm some kind of hallucination by now." "Well, that settles it," Kalen declared firmly. "You need to go back to Earth and tell them. He deserves to know he's going to be a father, even if he's, human." "But what about the council? What about my family?" Zalora argued, her voice trembling. "They'll never accept this." "Then we'll make them," Kalen replied with determination. "Look, I'll help you get back to Earth. We'll figure out a way to keep this under wraps until you talk to him. After that, well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it." Reluctantly, Zalora agreed. Deep down, she knew Kalen was right. Alex deserved answers, and so did the tiny life growing inside her. As they began planning their secret journey back to Earth, Zalora couldn't shake the feeling that her life, and perhaps the future of both species, was about to change forever.